today was to talk about projects that look around sort of postgraduate scholarships and study opportunities in the UK. As we go through the slides, don't hesitate to pop some questions in the chat, and we can kind of have a conversation throughout the presentation. I'll endeavour to go through the slides quite quickly to give more time for Q&As, because as Emmanuel said, there is a real kind of disparity in terms of information and knowledge about the UK education market. So hopefully I can help dispel some of those myths. So without further ado, let's dive into the presentation. So very brief, this is what we're going to cover. Just drop your email address, or I'll ask Emmanuel at the end and I can get you a PDF version of this sent out to you as well, so you've got it for your records. But a little bit about UK Education Guide. So UK Education Guide was founded in 2016 by a lady called Pat Moores and a gentleman called Dave Holden. So their background was actually in strategic marketing and education, working for highly ranked universities in the States. And they much, as Emmanuel has pointed out, were frustrated by the lack of clarity around the education system in the UK for international students and families. So they founded UK Education Guide, which was all about giving independent, objective, and highly comparable information to empower international students to make really well-informed decisions about studying in the UK. So our mission is always to provide international families with the very best, most relevant, independent and comparable information about UK education providers. We work with students from the age of 5 and 6 all the way through to postgrad and PhD applications. So this is a kind of a brief screenshot of what our portal looks like. So we have a number of different comparison portals where students and families can use to act as their first point of call, because obviously when you look at the UK market, there's so many universities and schools that you kind of go on to think, where do you start? So our portal is often that kind of first place where you go there to get some basic information. Anyway, you've heard enough about me, so we'll skip that slide. And then now kind of on to postgraduate level study in the UK. So 11 of the UK universities in the Times Higher Education are in the top 100 universities in the world. Obviously, as you'll know, we have strong heritage and our research-led innovation from our top UK universities. We offer really high-value postgraduate work visas, which are something that I'll come into a little bit later. And obviously, there are a number of scholarship opportunities. So firstly, one of the biggest questions we get asked at UK Education Guide, particularly for postgraduate students, is what are their options in terms of work? What are their options in terms of how it combines with their broader life, if that makes sense? It's not just about the studies, it's about, can they work? Can they live in the UK? And what are the kind of ancillary options for that? So some of the kind of key benefits of applying for a graduate visa is, if you're in the UK, you can currently hold a student tier 4 general visa. If you've studied a UK bachelor's degree or a postgraduate degree, you're eligible for a minimum time with the tier 4 visa. So there is so much opportunity that, whereas before it was a much shorter time you were able to stay after your degree. With the new sort of postgrad visas, you're allowed to stay 2 years after that program. And if you're on a PhD qualification, up to 3 years, which for international students is great because it gives you a little bit more time to find that job, to get that skilled worker visa and to integrate within the UK society. So I thought I would start with that as a topic of conversation, because it's a really interesting opportunity in terms of how the UK have changed their kind of legalities in the last couple of years, which is hugely beneficial for international students. Moving into scholarships, there are a great number of fully funded and partially funded scholarships in the UK. For example, the Great Scholarship Scheme, which is available in both Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and across Africa. Again, I'll send you a full link of the description in here. But just to give you a broad brush, a bit of an overview in terms of what's available in sort of 2023 to 24, 200 scholarships are offered by 49 universities across England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. And as I mentioned, they're available in certain countries. And one of the key barriers to entry for lots of international students is obviously the price point of the UK higher education market. However, there are scholarship opportunities available. And we find that when we work with students or families and coach them through the process, there are ways of making it more and more accessible for them. Now on to sort of the achieving scholarships. So these are sort of funded quite centrally, and these depend on what course you're applying for, but across a wide range of the options within the UK. So about 1,500 of these scholarships are offered every year, and all applicants do undergo quite a rigorous selection process. But again, it's a great route when you'll start to looking at your UK education options as a kind of a scholarship route. And then these are linked with the British Council. So again, the information is located in there. I'm just going to have a quick gander in the chat just to see if any questions have come in. And I can't, the chat function is not showing up for me. So just shout out or pause me if you have any questions thus far. And then on to the scholarships for the Commonwealth and the scholarship and the fellowship plan. So there's a Commonwealth scholarship scheme which is aimed at students from across the breadth of the Commonwealth who would not otherwise be able to afford to study in the UK, by funding sort of postgraduate studies in a number of kind of different formats and schemes that can look to support these international students. And again, the ones that tend to get mostly funded are the ones around STEM, if that makes sense. So there's a broad range of options, but the trick with this is always to dive in, do your research, and kind of undertake as much of that as possible, because the fees can be quite expensive. There's also a number of specific scholarships that are worth looking at in terms of if you fit into a specific group. So there's lots of scholarships for women in STEM. So if you're looking for science, technology, engineering, or mathematics, you're able to apply for quite a lot of scholarships. And some of these are funded centrally by a governing body, and others are provided by the university themselves. So again, I've got some links in this PDF that will get sent out to you after, just because I want to give you the signposting to where they are in the first instance. And then there's obviously scholarships that are institution specific, so relating to the actual course that you're applying on. So when you're going through that application process, you're able to select, would you like to apply for a scholarship? And there'll probably be some ancillary information that would be required as part of that to be able to qualify for that scholarship opportunity. And they all vary. Some are highly competitive, some are less competitive, but it's something that's really well doing your research and kind of getting in the process early. And what we say with a lot of the students and families that we work with across the globe is that the earlier you start the application process, not only the higher probability of getting into the course, but also the higher probability of being able to apply for scholarships, being successful with scholarships, but also the more time you're going to have to actually be ready for that course and to make a return on investment for when you're going. So you can be looking at, okay, not just what course am I studying, what text do I have to read, how can I be so prepared for that degree, but also what are the workplace opportunities that I can look for that will further supplement not just my income, but the opportunity to learn and develop and apply some of your skills in that context. So I know I've whizzed through that really, really quick in terms of the scholarship kind of presentations, but what I really wanted to do for the next part of the session is open the floor in terms of questions people have specifically about studying in the UK, because what we find with a lot of families is there's no kind of one general way of application. So I was more interested to know, firstly, who in the room is looking for postgrad, who is looking for undergrad qualification in the UK, and then probably dive in and answer some specific questions to hopefully give as much bespoke value to you guys as possible on the call. So thank you very much for listening to my short presentation on scholarships, which we will follow up with in terms of, so you have all the links so you can explore yourself. But I'd love to open the floor to some more general questions about studying in the UK. So I don't know, Emmanuel, if it's worth you going first in terms of sort of a very broad question that you might want me to answer about the sector. But hopefully that presentation has delivered its brief in terms of looking at scholarships from a broad perspective in the UK.
Thanks, Raf. That was short and precise, and I'm sure everyone prefers it that way. I'm very sure a lot of people have questions also. So I would appreciate if you can raise your hand If you don't want to raise your hand, you can please type your questions in the chat box. Of course, Raf will read them and is happy to answer your questions. So don't be shy. No question is silly. That's why you're here. So, well, I appreciate if we can have your questions now.
Wonderful. Thank you for both those questions and really quite personal. And this is why I love doing the quick presentation and then opening the floor to questions, because everyone's experience is a little bit different. So hopefully I'll be able to provide a lot of value. So firstly, in terms of the acquisition of the visa, so once you apply to a university and you're successfully made as an entrant, you will receive a CAS. Which is a common acceptance statement. So something that will enable you to then go with the visa to apply for your time in the UK. Now, depending on your course, depending on your time of stay, depending on where you'll be staying in the UK, you will also have to prove that you have the funds to be able to reside in the UK, if that makes sense. So these are kind of the key criteria factors. But the primary factor is, firstly, have you got the acceptance to get into university? Once you've got that, that's a huge tick. And then the second huge tick is, do you have the finances? Can you prove that you have the finances in your bank account that enable you to continue those studies? So in terms of, if you have those two things together, your probability of getting a visa being accepted to the UK are really, really high. Now, on to the second point, and again, always worth clarifying, UK Education Guide, we're not visa specialists, we work with visa partners. And so all of this information, we generally recommend working with specific visa firms, if that makes sense. So but this is just the experience that we've had in working with our students, and we signpost and kind of coach them through the process. So in terms of the second question you asked, which was all around the bringing families over with the student, it all depends on kind of the dependents and the application. Each one is quite bespoke. And so my recommendation on that one is firstly, as a student visa, you can bring dependents. As a graduate visa, you actually can't bring dependents, if that makes sense. So while you're studying your course, you would be able to apply to bring dependents, whereas once you've graduated, you'd switch on to your graduate visa. On that visa, you're actually not able to apply to bring over dependents. So what we always say on this one is, when you're working through that process, to make sure that you have all of this planned out in advance. Think about, okay, how long am I likely to be in the UK for? Do I want to reside in the UK after? If I do, what are the ways that I can do that? And being really strategic in terms of step-by-step working your way through the process. Because for lots of families, what we tend to find, not the ones that work with us because we help them plan the process, but those that sometimes do it themselves, what they'll do is, I think, brilliant, I've got the student visa. The student will come over, work, study here, work for a bit, and on the hours they're able to, and then try and bring the family over later once they've changed their visa. But unless they've got a skilled worker visa, that can be quite challenging. And so my recommendation always is to get your visa planning done really, really early, and always communicate all of the facts to your legal representative when you're running through the process. You can apply for the visas yourself, which does save considerable cost. However, we tend to recommend that our students and partners that we work with either work with an OISC regulated firm, which are one of the independent kind of bodies that look at the sort of visa accreditation partners, and also working with a specific law firm. Because what this does is it takes the pressure off yourself in terms of working your way through the process. So hopefully that was a useful answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Rob. So we have a number of questions in the chat box now, but I think there's one person who's been raising his hand. So his or her hand, I don't know. So we'll take Prince first, then we'll go to the questions in the chat. Is that fine?
Brilliant.
All right, Prince, please let's have you.
Hello.
Hello,
Prince. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can. Please go ahead.
All right. My question is, apart from the Commonwealth Scholarship and then the Chevening Scholarship, is it possible to get scholarship from the university itself, like kind of a departmental-based scholarship, or funding from a supervisor?
So generally,
as
sorry,
well as
Prince,
external scholarships, or scholarship from external sources as well.
Absolutely, Prince. So you make a really pertinent point. That is, so there's kind of your internal scholarships and your external scholarships. So in terms of your internal ones, universities do provide a number of scholarships you can apply for. Now, but people have the perception that they're granted by a supervisor. That's often not the case, and it depends for what kind of study that you're looking for. And each university will have a different process and depending on what course, will have different scholarships available. So what we always say is make sure once you know what universities you're looking at and what courses you're interested in, is diving into their websites and understanding kind of what options they have. And so that's an absolutely brilliant point. So that's the first bit. And your second part, can you get external sponsorship? So this is a really, really interesting one. So we've actually worked with quite a lot of students around the world whereby obviously the UK fees are quite surmountable. So we say to them, and this has happened to quite a number of students, where they've actually raised or looked for grant funding in their own country of residence that helps kind of combine towards funding their studies in the UK. So what we often recommend to students is actually try and do both. So are there grants in your home country? Are there options there specifically for your course, your individual, and even going as local as kind of like village funds, town funds, city funds that might offer you some small scholarships or grants that will enable you to sort of fill up that bucket of the fees that you have to make, if that makes sense. And those that are able to cover quite a lot. I mean, a really great example of this is actually a good friend of mine, a gentleman called Dylan Kawende. So he's actually a UK-based student, but he was applying for his legal masters, which is very, very expensive at Cambridge. He actually crowdfunded that himself. So he set up a Kickstarter and he applied for grants, networked with companies. So there's a number of ways that you can raise those funds. So what we've gone through in the presentation and what you'll have and be able to do research yourself on is just some first points of call that you can start at looking at options for funding. But actually, the reality is the opportunities of funding could be from your employer. It could be from local businesses. It could be from businesses in country. It could be from a partnership arrangement. It could be from a local fund. It could be from certain groups or societies provide grants to different nations or for different individuals to study abroad. So my biggest recommendation with all of this, and Prince, that's why I'm so glad you raised this point, is that when you're looking at funding your studies in the UK, don't just look at one scholarship or one fund that you think is going to fill kind of the whole bucket of fees, because that's unlikely to be the case. The reality is that looking at a number of different scholarship opportunities, bursaries, funds, grants to kind of fill up that bucket of funds that will enable you to do it is often not just the highest probability of success, but often the way you'll be able to raise the largest amount of funds. So thank you for that brilliant question, Prince, and I hope my answer was useful.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Ra. Yeah, I mean, and then looking through the question, just to say this before Raf goes through the questions in the chat box, I've seen a couple of questions, and I think people are expecting maybe specific suggestions with respect to scholarship, but maybe I should put a caveat that the essence of this program or organizations like RAFS is not to relieve you of your duty to research and actually look for funding. I don't think anybody has a comprehensive list of scholarship anywhere that they will hand over to you, and then you can cherry pick and say, oh, I like this, and then you're sure 80-95% I'll get. No, you actually have to do the hard work and search. And I mean, you have to do the digging yourself and look for the scholarships. But definitely you can get the guidance from organizations like us, from people like RAF. They can always guide you, help you package yourself and everything you need to get those scholarships. But one thing I'm sure today is that no one is going to give you a list of scholarship and say, these are 50 scholarships that are offered by various universities in the UK, start applying to them. It's not going to happen. And Okay, Ralph, do you want to say something about that before we move to the
No,
question?
I think your point is so pertinent, Emmanuel. And what we wanted to do today is kind of spark that kind of almost where's the first place that you start. So when we send out this PDF presentation, it will give you a number of scholarships that you actually can apply for. So you'll probably have a starting list of sort of between 5 or 10 kind of places to start that search, to kind of, because often knowing where to start is actually the hardest bit. The reason why no one has an infinite list of scholarships is through a number of things. Firstly, it depends on the variables of what characteristics you tick as an individual. So some scholarships might be open to certain parts of Africa, some might be certain parts of Asia, some will be country specific, some will be gender specific, some will be course specific. There's all these different variables. So it's understanding kind of what variables you hit, and then looking at what scholarships kind of meet the criteria, the funding criteria, to be able to apply for that. And so in terms of understanding the key steps, kind of step one is knowing what course do I want to apply for? Why do I want to apply for that course? If it's a master's level, what is there a piece of research that I'm trying to try and do? What is my current space in that? Is there a space in that field that I'm trying to fit? If it's a PhD, what hypothesis do I have? What questions am I looking to answer? Once you have this, you can then go down to more granularity and say, okay, where am I from? Where am I applying from? And what funds will then meet those two criteria together? So what we tend to do is work with students on understanding exactly as Emmanuel said, what is the package they're offering to the universities? And then moving forward from that. Obviously for PhDs, some of them are completely funded and also have some paid options as well. I know in this presentation, we've just talked about the UK specifically, but it's always worth looking at the Canadian market, at the United States. New Zealand also have some very, very good opportunities. So I hope today, for me, the main aim is to kind of spark almost give you some roots that you can dig into, and then keep kind of going further down and explore more of the scholarship routes. So no, absolutely, Emmanuel, I'm with you 100% on that.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. All right, so let's go through the questions in the chat box. The first one from Eunice says, do you want to read yourself, or you want me to read it out loud?
I'm more than happy to read them out loud. So the question here is from the perspective of a female postgraduate PhD student with 2 children who hopes to secure funding for her program in a UK university. So thank you, Eunice. So the first thing that you'd need to know here is what type of PhD are you applying for, if that makes sense. What courses are you looking for, and when you know what or what's your research question, if that makes sense. So if you want to pop in the chat what your research question is likely to be, I might be able to kind of give you some more bespoke answers, or at least to help you kind of cut through. So we'll jump into the next question, but once Eunice has given me her research question or hypothesis, I will be able to jump in and do that. So sort of next question from Ozzy, which is meeting is being live streamed. Okay, got it. How does a Nigerian trained doctor get to practice in the UK? So again, this is not really from our expertise in terms of an education perspective. My recommendation would always be to have a conversation with a visa specialist and a medical specialist, if that makes sense. Your best bet is kind of reaching out to whether it be your embassy in the UK, or just having a conversation. I actually do know the answer for Brazilian families, because we worked with one and supported them on this, and also for an Argentinian family. But specifically for Nigerian, I'm not entirely sure. It might be that you have to do some retraining, or it might be that you can come over straight away. There will often be a transition opportunity, but your best bet is to speak to a medical governing body, whether that be in your country or in the UK. So apologies, I can't give you an answer on that. So the next question we have from Ade, which is, I want to ask if there's a scholarship opportunity at all in the UK that can be said to have a higher percentage or hope of success. So brilliant question. This is something that we get asked all of the time. And the probability of success does depend on a number of factors. So there's kind of three key factors we talk about when looking at scholarships. So firstly is kind of what course are you studying for? This will impact the probability of not just success, but the amount of scholarship opportunities available. We tend to find there's more scholarships in STEM than the likes of business masters or legal masters. And so the first criteria is kind of what course you're applying for. 2, the probability is determined by the demand for students in that year. So is it a year where the university getting loads of applicants? Is it the year that university or that fund are getting less applicants? So year on year, the probabilities are different depending on this. And then kind of the third key factor is determinant on the quality of the applicant. So again, all of these factors can give you a ballpark probability that will enable you to get that, but there's no fund that is more likely or less likely to give you the funds. And what we say to our students when they ask us this question is the only way of increasing your probability is by doing a high quality application. And some students then will ask a follow-up, well, what about if I apply to 400 scholarships? Does my probability increase? Absolutely not. Your best bet, you're better off sending 5 or 10 highly targeted scholarship applications than you are sending off 200 generic. It's absolutely the same in terms of job interviews or things like that. You're better off going absolutely direct, making it really personal, and spending and investing the time in acquiring that scholarship, if that makes sense. So unfortunately, I can't give you the answer. Is there any funds that are more likely to give you to give you the funds? But hopefully there's some advice and some tips that will increase your probability of garnering that scholarship. So hopefully that was useful. So next question again from Eunice, question 2. For someone who has a partial funding, is it wise to travel for a postgraduate program in the UK university? Are there jobs that can be combined with studying? So this all depends on a number of factors. Is it wise is all about that personal, that individual person's risk appetite, if that makes sense. So if you have partial funding, it depends on how much that partial funding is. Is it 20%, 40%, 50%? And how much you're going to be able to work alongside that course. So what I would say in answer to this question, to know if it would be wise or not wise, is to invest the time to actually do the maths yourself, if that makes sense. So, okay, how much are the course costs? Where are you going to study? What are the costs of living in that area? Are you bringing dependents with you? If you are, what are the costs of their living circumstances? How, for the hours you're able to work on your visa, how much are you likely to be paid per hour, if that makes sense? So all of these kind of key variables will help you understand how much money you need to survive and thrive in the UK, and also the probability you'll be able to acquire those funds. So much of this depends on your personal circumstances. But there are absolutely jobs that you can do that combine with your studies, and actually, in our experience, often benefit your studies and can often be a route into a skilled work opportunity in the long run. So we always do, particularly at postgrad, encourage our students to look for work placement opportunities, so they're able to hopefully have a leg up on the ladder in terms of their applications. But in terms of being wise to travel, it all depends on your funding requirements. One thing that is always worth bearing in mind, and we do articulate to all of our students, and we have obviously a team of admissions experts that support our families and help them make these decisions, is about location of study in the UK. So London is a lot more expensive than other places in the Midlands or up north in the country. And thus taking into account your finances in terms of your application is a really pertinent thing to do. So Eunice, hopefully that answers your question. So back to Ozzy, with the West Africa Senior School Certificate, what route can a prospective undergraduate visa follow? So I believe university to university offer sort of different options. Your best bet is obviously to apply through UCAS and look at the specific requirements on the university. The key challenges for you is obviously you'll need to make sure you have your appropriate IELTS score for that course and the qualification. One of the things that we do say to a lot of students with the West African Senior School Certificate is that the pathway program, so foundation degrees, can be a really, really great entry route to embarking on your undergraduate experience in the UK, and can often give you a higher probability of getting into a course that you want, but also giving the opportunities to actually thrive on your course. So it adds one more year onto your journey, but actually we find that the students that do that do absolutely thrive and often have a higher probability of getting work opportunities in the long run because they've just been in the UK that much longer. So hopefully that was useful. Back to Eunice again. That's how we're flying through the questions, and hopefully the answers are valuable. Question 3, which should be done first, securing admissions or funding? Eunice, this is a brilliant question. My genuine recommendation is focus on the courses or the course you want to apply for. Get this sorted first, because then you know what funding you're trying to raise to be able to get on that course, if that makes sense. Whereas if you don't have those secured, particularly if you don't know the courses you're applying for, you won't know the internal scholarship opportunities available for those courses. Also, you'll struggle to go to external funding bodies because you won't be able to say, I need these funds because I'm trying to go to this university to do this course. So my recommendation would be is spend the time working with a partner and an education agent, or doing the research yourself to understand what course is right for you, and then looking at how you fund that, and creating a strategic plan of doing that will be really valuable. So back to Ozzy, which is, are postgraduate students allowed to work while studying? They absolutely are, but it's for a set number of hours which have recently changed. So make sure you're always keeping abreast of the UK government's information in terms of how your particular student visa enables you to work. So currently you are absolutely able to, and that's recently been updated. How can we get a fully funded scholarship program? So Olamide, that is or Joy, forgive me if I've got your names the wrong way around. This will all depend on your course. Some courses and some universities will offer fully funded, other courses and universities won't. So the trick is to know what course you're applying for, and then you'll be able to ascertain what universities apply fully funded or partially funded scholarships for that opportunity. Again, the STEM courses are more likely to have those. The business and law degrees are a lot less likely to have fully funded programs. So question number 4 from Eunice, for people who have a OND or a HND, how easy is it to secure scholarships to study in UK compared to their counterparts with first class and second class honour grades? Now, this is a very, very difficult question because it depends university to university. And it all depends on the quality of the application and what level of qualification you're applying for. Are you applying for undergrad, postgrad, PhD? So it all depends. I mean, generally, the quality of your qualification will be factored in terms of a lot of scholarship applications, but some of them might not. So it really depends on what scholarship you're applying for. So that's always worth bearing in mind. And then we've got a question from Joy. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're more than welcome for the presentation. I would like to know if you can outline some step-by-step strategies on one can employ in ensuring higher probability of securing a scholarship in the UK. This is an absolute diamond question to finish the set of questions. So Joy, thank you so much for this, and thank you all so much for your diligent questions. You've definitely had me on my toes and testing my knowledge. So I hope that I provided lots of value for all of you. So in terms of a step-by-step strategy, so step 1, research what you want to be studying. Now, I'm going to give a caveat. I'm going to try and talk very generically because I want to cover undergrad, postgrad, and PhD. But I'll go more towards masters and PhD because I think that's more of what we have in the room, and also it's a little bit more bespoke. So, step 1, know the course or know the research topic that you want to be applying for, that you want to research. Understand this. Step 1. Step 2, understand what universities offer that course. So where are your dream courses? Create yourself or work with a partner to create a list of five or six that offer the course that you want, and are in a place that you'd like to, you can imagine yourself wanting to be in as a really first point of call. Step 2, do some research on the academics at that university. So understand how well are they published in that subject area, and what are their expertise. And honestly, reach out to those academics and ask them specific questions about the course. Now, the trick, particularly with course-specific scholarships, is that you want to prove that you're going to be really hardworking, that you want to be able to add value to the course, and that you will be a leading student and provide value to that university. So my recommendation is do as much research as you can in that area and understand as much as possible from those professors about the subject area, what you're going to do, and how you could add value to the process prior to even submitting an application. So really look to engage with people in the sector, ask questions, go on LinkedIn, make sure you're doing all of your research and engaging people from across the board. Because if you do this diligently and well, you'll understand more about the course, more about the criteria. And with that, ask questions about the scholarship. So ring up the universities, talk to universities, talk to the funding providers and ask them, what are you looking for? And then once you kind of have a broad understanding of what they're looking for, then you can write applications and for the scholarships that are specific around those criteria and utilizing your expert knowledge or soon to be expert knowledge and passion for that course. And this goes back to the point that I articulated earlier in the presentation, which is all about making sure that you don't need to do loads of applications, just do a few, but do them really, really well. Now, if you do this, you will significantly increase your probability of securing a scholarship in the UK. And then once you know kind of the courses, you've got the information, you've got the funding requirements for the scholarships, you then kind of, from the university side, I would then be looking at what external scholarships are available. So looking at, and again, each country is slightly different. Some countries have town councils that might be able to point in the direction of pots of money that you can apply for. Sometimes libraries, local libraries have funds. It's been really amazing doing this work over the last few years with many students, is that there are lots of opportunities to access some of the smaller grants, if that makes sense. Does your government offer specific scholarships for certain courses? And if you combine an internal scholarship application to a university with external sort of funding opportunities, you're able to again increase that probability of success. And sometimes saying to both, oh, you've been, for example, if you've been backed by the university, saying, the university is backing me. When you go to local funding providers in your country, that could be something that the government could be really interested in. So having these conversations. So my best bet with all of these scholarships, much like fundraising in business, is have conversations, build networks, build relationships with people that people want to help you on this process, if that makes sense. It's exactly what this UK Education Guide does. It's all about changing lives and supporting future generations of educational advancement. So be brave, go out there and talk to people. And once you've done that, then get your applications in. And hopefully that's a relatively broad example, but how you could go about the process and almost a step-by-step strategy you can employ to ensure a higher probability of securing a scholarship in the UK. So Joy, thank you so much for that brilliant question. And I believe we've got Eunice with a hand up and some more questions. Brilliant. Emmanuel, I'll hand the floor back to you so you can invite the questions in. And Joy, I hope that was a useful answer for you.
Thanks, Raf. That was good. I see some hands up. Maybe I should start from Eunice, especially because you have one question outstanding sort of for her. So Eunice, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Raf. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you perfect, Eunice. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to attend to my questions, and sorry for giving you a lot of them. So brilliant. I'm actually asking on behalf of my mentee. I do have a mentee who wrote a cold email to a prospective supervisor. She's in material science, brilliant. Material engineering, yeah. So the supervisor responded and told her that he only has funding for research, that he can fund her PhD research and everything concerning her laboratory analysis and all of that, but she has to look for funds for her living expenses and her tuition. And the challenge is that he also recommended, because the supervisor seemed to be abreast with what is applicable in Nigeria. So he recommended that she should seek for government-based scholarships in Nigeria. But the challenge is that her university where she's lecturing at the moment is not yet, under the TED Fund funding. So she cannot access TED Fund at the moment. Yeah, because of where she's working. And also she has children. She has like 3 kids. So now the challenge is, how do you start traveling to UK with just the promise of having your research funded, but there is no promise for tuition, and then your living expenses coupled with the fact that you're going with children. So I don't know if you have any tips you can share with me. The University of Cranfield University, that's where she got that opportunity. Thank you. And then my second question before I go, I also have a mentee who currently has HND, qualification, and he wants to secure funding for his PhD research. So I want to know, are there any specific examinations or things he needs to do differently in order to stand the chance of being selected? Because I know sometimes the preference is always given to those with first class, those with higher grades and all of that. So thank you.
You're very welcome, Eunice. I'm going to be strange and go for question 2 before question 1. So for question 2, you want to look, when you know specifically what university wants to apply for, it's worth having that conversation with them. I think the jump from HND to PhD would be huge. So firstly, it's making sure that the universities actually will accept them. This is not something that you would not normally see someone going from a HND qualification to a PhD, if that makes sense. Unless they had a specific research question and they could prove that they had the capability to deliver that level of education, if that makes sense. Because in terms of the stratas of education, obviously HND is, so PhD is the kind of the top of the pyramid, and HND is one of the building blocks on the way there, and a brilliant qualification, but is a big jump to PhD. So I'm sure some universities would allow it if that person had a lot of work experience. But again, I wouldn't want to talk about the probability of scholarship because that's different. I would first ascertain if the universities will accept him on that HND qualification. And that would be my first step before even thinking about scholarships, because that's a huge jump. And also understanding if he is or they are able to do that qualification. One of the things we pride ourselves on at UK Education Guide is we help students kind of map out that whole process with the highest probabilities of success. So sometimes we'll tell students that it's better to go a slightly longer way that might cost a tiny bit more in the short run, but your probability of success in the long run is exponential. So sometimes it's always worth kind of mapping out that process. And I'll use that analogy of mapping it out to kind of go back and answer your first question, which is all around funding. So my advice to you as a mentor, as part of this process, would be really forensically map out the projected costs of that family as they were to reside in the UK. Now, living in Cranfield as an area, that part of the UK is relatively cheaper than if it was central London. So that's already a big tick in the right direction, if that makes sense. So I would go through and I would map out all of the basic living costs. So it would be starting from flights. So cost of flights, cost of return flights, obviously NHS surcharge, cost if they're doing someone to support their visa, cost of that, cost of accommodation for 12 months, what's that going to be, predicted sort of predicted expenditure. Again, utility and gas bills are quite expensive in the UK, so kind of have it, genuinely almost going down to the pound. I know this sounds like a really long process, but what it means is it will help you as the mentor be able to coach her to be able to say, actually, is this a prudent decision? Is this too much risk? And be able to kind of, if it turns out that there's no way that she can afford it, then you open up a strategy of how do you get more, do you raise more funds? Whereas if she can afford it, it's a bit easier. So once you know forensically exactly how much you need, you're then able to create a strategic plan to do that. So my advice to the first question is go through it line by line, and really map out if it's doable on the funds that she currently has with that kind of partial scholarship. And then looking at, okay, where are the gaps? Where do we need to fill the gaps? And also just getting her to map out her own personal cash flow, if that makes sense. So almost treating it like a business and saying, right, we have these funds. This is when they'll run out. What would I need to bring in before then? And kind of mapping out the stages, understanding when the payment cycle for the tuition fees comes in, talking to university about, are there extensions on payment cycles so she can keep more cash in the bank for longer. So being really creative around that process. And I mean, it's something that we work really hard to support our students and families with, because we understand that it is critical in ensuring that they succeed, because what we always say is there's enough pressure on these students to succeed without the financial burden. So when you add the added pressure of finances, it can sometimes be overbearing. So my biggest advice is make sure that it's well planned, well documented. And if there's anything we can help to support you on that, just don't hesitate to reach out. But it sounds like you're doing an absolutely wonderful job as a mentor. So I truly commend you on that. And thank you so much for your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. I noticed Amarachi was raising her hand before, so I want to give you the chance if you still want to ask your question. Otherwise, I mean, we're running out of time.
Okay, I don't know. Good afternoon, Mr. Rea.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Amarachi. I just want to ask some questions. Number one is, what's the scope of your mentorship at Ed Research Hub? Because I know a number of times I've come across this kind of opportunities, and maybe we have webinars, but to get that access, most times students are not able to have access to mentors easily. I know that everyone is busy, but I'm just asking, what is your plan for your mentees at Ed Research Hub? What is the scope? Is it just the webinars? Do you offer any form of assistance? Do you review SOPs at all? Do you assist in any way, maybe to provide waivers for application fees? I mean, sometimes it's like a stumbling block for students applying to different institutions, paying application fees and all, doing West evaluation for your transcript and things like that. So what's the scope of your mentorship at Ed Research Hub? Thank you.
All right, Ralph, I'll take that from you. Thank you. So Amarachi, that's a good question. Actually, before the end of this event, there's going to be a video that will give you more details about our mentorship program. Basically, what we do in our mentorship program is we help you to be competitive. We don't offer financial assistance. I mean, we don't. What we do is that we help you from our experience, because most of the people, if not all, have experienced. We've all studied on one scholarship or the other, difficult ones to get in different parts of the world. Some of us are still studying also. So basically, that's what we do. We don't spoon feed. We just help you with the hard work, such that you are more focused. You can channel your energy at activities that really pays as far as your search for scholarship and all that is concerned. We're not going to help you with your ways. We're not going to give you application. Well, if we have an organization or someone who gives us the fund and say, like we said, we are a not-for-profit organization. If people come in and say, okay, Ed Research Hub, we are giving you this money, we want to help people fund their application fee or whatever. Of course, we are happy to do that. But at the moment, we don't do that. And we will not be doing that. But what we do is to counsel, is to guide you, is to advise, help you package your application as much as possible so that you are competitive. But it doesn't relieve you of the responsibility to do the hard work yourself also. I'll also recommend that you have a look at our website. You'll see more information. Anyway, so I hope that helps, Amarachi. So I won't be taking any more questions. I think we're running out of time. First, before we move on to what is next, I want to say a big thank you to Raf. It's been really insightful. We appreciate you coming to do this for us. We know you're very busy. You have a lot of things that you're doing, so we're not taking this for granted. Thank you, Raf.
You are more than welcome, Manuel. Thank you so much for everyone's engagement. It's been so great to be on a call with so many individuals that are really passionate about education. So I'm going to pop a member of my team's email address in the chat. So if you need anything from my end or you need to contact me, please don't hesitate to reach out to Stephen, and we can get whatever you need or a slide deck sent over to you if that works for you, Emmanuel. But no,
Yeah,
it's been a real privilege to speak to all of you, and just thank you so much for being so engaged. And I may say I take my hats off to what the Ed Research Hub are doing, because there is an absolute need in the market to support individuals in understanding these processes and to share best practice and their experience. So I commend it. So thank you all so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Don't hesitate to reach out or contact me on LinkedIn. I'll pop that in the chat as well. So I'll put Stephen's email in the chat. I'll pop the LinkedIn, and I will leave you all in peace. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
all right. So before I yield the floor to our director, so I'll quickly say this: things you probably just to the participants, things I believe you must have learned today. The internet is a very powerful tool when it comes to searching for scholarship and all that. Google is powerful, and there's a lot of information hidden there. And Ralph also said something. He said you can reach out to him on LinkedIn. Beyond reaching out to Raphael on LinkedIn, there are a lot of opportunities hidden there also. So engage these platforms, engage us also, and we will help you as much as we can. So yeah, I'll stop here. I want to say thank you to every one of you. Please watch this video for information on our mentorship program. Thank you.
And training program and mentorship program. Welcome to the Ed Research Hub. The Ed Research Hub is a non-profit organization founded in 2021, committed to creating an inspiring and motivating atmosphere for young graduate students and young researchers in developing countries. We have different programs, including the Research and Training Program, the Mentorship Program, the Career Readiness Program, and the Community Outreach. And we have organized different webinars from our Research and Training Program and Mentorship Program, where we help mentor and educate young graduate students from developing countries on how they can effectively apply for the graduate admission and scholarship, and as well prepare them for the challenges lying ahead in their graduate studies. And also, we have organized different programs, and the unique one is the mentorship program advertised this year, where we admitted different young graduate students from different countries by our seasoned mentors. And also every week, we upload different scholarship updates from different funding agencies to keep our young graduate students and our subscribers updated of the opportunities. this journey? Remember, tomorrow starts now. You can contact us as an institution, as an individual, or as a community through our website or through the organization email that is displayed on our website.